Hello YouTube. Today I want to discuss the topic of injuries and why they happen. This is going to be an introduction to a series of videos where I'm going to dive deeper in the concepts I'm going to lay out today. I've already made videos about managing pain and how to train around pain. I've made a video debunking the fatalist idea that injuries just happen and that you can't control it. So now that that's said and that I've exposed my ideas and the fact that I believe that injuries happen because of you, because of your own inability to control certain variables, I want to talk about said variables, right? Because it can be very beneficial. And all of these videos are of course going to go in the injury prevention playlist. So let's start right off the bat. What is an injury? An injury is a part of your body that breaks, right? It can be a nail. Breaking a nail is an injury. Is it bad? No. Why? Because it is not integral to the body's ability to move. It's going to hurt, but it's not going to stop you from doing daily activities. Snapping a tendon in your knee, however, because it's from a very important structural part of the human body, is going to be catastrophical because your legs carry you. So from the same token, breaking a finger is not going to be as bad as breaking your tibia, right? So even from there, we can already assess that injuries have different gradations of severity. But that's going to be for a different video because I do want to make a type of checklist that is going to allow you to determine whether or not an injury is really severe and bad, but that's going to be in the future. I want to wait a little bit before I do that. So let's talk about why those injuries happen. Well, the number one would be volume and intensity manipulation mishap. A lot of that happens that way, where you push the intensity too high and you do the extra rep and you snap something. All of that is just comes down usually to not lifting with your ego and knowing what you're capable of, knowing what your limits are, knowing where the reps and the sets should stop. All of that comes from experience and wisdom. I didn't used to have that. But back in the days when I got injured, it was always that. It was me being completely blind to the fact that I did not have the ability to perform a rep, grinding through a rep, getting hurt. Nowadays, this doesn't happen anymore. It hasn't happened in close to 2 years now because I've gained that wisdom through the injuries. But I hope I can help you guys who are new to avoid that by listening to me. So what I mean by volume and intensity manipulation is knowing what your body can lift. That's intensity. How much can you lift for 1 rep, for 10 reps? Think also that the more reps you do, the easier it is to see a bad rep coming, and the easier it is to power through a bad rep with poor form without getting injured. If you cat back deadlift, meaning that you deadlift with a rounded spine, your 8 rep max, you understand that the risk of injury is much lower than if you do the same with your 1 rep max. This is because injuries tend to occur when we put the body in a disadvantageous position that puts too much stress on a certain part of the structure. And the part of the structure we don't want to target is the tendons, and it is the bones, the discs, all of that stuff. What we want to target is the muscles. And of course, you cannot activate the muscles without the tendons and the bones and all of that stuff, the ligaments, also being involved. But we want their involvement to be minimum. We want the involvement to be accidental. It happens because that's the way the human body moves. But we don't want to encourage it, right? This is where technique and good forms come into play. But technique and good forms will not save you from a poor decision. So that's the intensity part. As far as the volume part, it's more about recovery. It's more about knowing where your body stands, what your body can take. And usually I've found that the type of injuries you get when you do that are less severe because they're not freak accident. It's usually an overuse injury. And again, your body will send you signs. Your body will let you know at some point, hey, that part of body is hurting for a reason. You should really reassess your volume and maybe let me recover more. That's where tendonitis comes from. Tendonitis, you can, if you sprain something, it can lead to a case of tendonitis. I've had that happen. But for the most part, tendonitis is something that builds up slowly, and you end up realizing that it's there when it's installed because you've been doing it for so long that now the inflammation is part of you. you've seen it coming. It's just that you didn't care enough and now it's there, right? But again, if you used your brain, if you used your head, you would manage to actually avoid that type of injury. That's the volume and intensity part. But it's only one portion of what causes injury. Another part of that is your body's ability to get into certain positions. You will hear a ton of people say they don't deadlift because they cannot get in the proper position. I'm personally not of the opinion or mindset that everyone needs to do conventional deadlift. Like, you will meet these guys, they're usually older, who will tell you, oh, if you don't conventional deadlift, you're not a man. I think that's a very reductive way to approach training. And also, it's not understanding the fact that some people are not built like you are. I've known people that I've followed and helped in the gym that could not, for the life of them, get in position for a conventional deadlift. Of course, this is going to be something that is accurate only if you've worked through the technique. If you take someone that has no hamstring mobility and they can't do a deadlift, then for sure, yeah, they can't because they have no mobility. The topic of mobility I will detail in the training principle series, but we're going to assume that the case study we're talking about and the specimen that is used in the example has good mobility, meaning that they don't have a bad shoulder mobility or stuff like that. They're fully capable, but their leverages and the height of their limbs does not allow them to pull conventional with the arms outside of the legs without a rounder lumbar spine. So in which case, what do? You do a different style. You do sumo. A lot of tall guys, when they switch to sumo, they realize, wow, it's fantastic, it feels great. And you know what? It's not going to hurt their ability to build muscle. They're going to push the weight with sumo, get stronger on sumo, gain tonnage that way and strength, and then they can focus on the hamstrings and the lower back with accessory movements. This is the way to approach lifting. It's not my way or the highway. The highway has 500 lanes and you can take whichever at whichever speed. That's the beauty of bodybuilding. So that's another thing. Getting your body in a position that it's not used to, it's not made for, and trying to move heavy weights is going to lead to injury. This is also why if you introduce a new movement, if you change your stance, if you change your hand width, always start low. Start with low weight. I don't care if you can squat 500 pounds. If you decide one day, hey, I'm going to get my stance much closer because I want to blow up my quads, lower the weight to 250 pounds. Yeah, it's going to feel light, but you need that assessment to be able to tell, okay, my body is able in that position to do that thing. The flip side of that is that there really are no bad positions. I mean, I can think of certain universal cues that I would want to avoid, like the shoulders flaring, like the lumbar spine rounding. But at the end of the day, there are certain individuals that will be able to pull it off. It's the same for certain portions of the lifting catalog that some people say, oh, it's bad and never do it. For example, behind the neck presses. Some people do them just fine, but there are certain details that you need to approach when you do them. You cannot just jump into them, and some people are not made for them. It doesn't make them bad across the board, but you need to regard them with a certain respect, and you need to approach them with enough of a fear or an apprehension that they're not going to lead to an injury. So that's another thing that creates injury, right? It's that angle that your body is not used to, and you put too much weight, and now it's snapped. And for me, those two categories, the volume and intensity and the positioning, make up for the vast majority of injuries, which is a good sign. It's a good thing because it means that it's highly controllable. It's 100% dependent on you. Freak injuries are rare, and freak injuries are the food. The food are freak injuries. You go down on a squat with what doesn't even represent 50% of your max and something snaps. Like, you hear a noise and you get a pain, you are fully recovered, you were using perfect form, but something snapped. I'm going to say that this is super, super rare. Most of the time you will find that when that happens to you, once you've dealt with the grief and you've recovered and you're not emotional anymore and you think about it, you're going to realize, oh yeah, it wasn't a freak accident. Like I did something that made that happen. For me, for example, back when I was, I had first gotten my 2 plates bench, and I strained a pec with 1 plate. And I was thinking, wow, I really am unlucky. How do I strain myself with 1 plate? I can rep that 15 times easy. And then I thought about it and I realized, hey, it's because I didn't warm up properly. Even though my body has the ability to bench 2 plates, it doesn't have the ability to bench 1 plate cold. So it was my fault. It was not a freak accident. It's part of that third. But in reality, it was because I didn't control something. It wasn't really volume and intensity. Here it was warm up. So in that third category, I'm not going to really put freak accidents. I'm going to put things that do not fall in the other two, that is still under your control, that you can still see coming. For example, if you slip on ice and you blow out your quads, to me that's not a freak accident. You slipped on ice. You could have seen that coming, you could have had better balance, all of that could have been controlled. The portion of things that will really be out of your control that will lead to injuries are going to be minimal. For example, someone tackling you as you deadlift. Yeah, you couldn't really see that coming, right? That's not your fault, but is that going to happen to you, do you think? I don't think so. So this is going to close that video about why do injuries happen. This is, to me, a pretty comprehensive guide, but of course, because there are topics within that video that I want to really delve into and really detail, I'm going to base the subcategories of videos I'm going to be making for the injury prevention playlist on that one. So I'm always going to be coming back to that one, and any questions in the comments I will incorporate in the future videos. Thank you for watching. I hope you stay injury free, and I don't hope, I know you will, because you'll pay attention, and have a good day.